The Woman Who Grabbed My Arm, a story of alliance reckoning and what happens when two strangers are both right. The most precise revenge is not the one you plan alone. It is the one that finds you at the exact moment you are about to make the worst decision of your life. Part 1: The Detour. I was not supposed to be at the Anchor and Line that Tuesday evening. The Anchor and Line is a waterfront bar on the east side of Galveston Bay, the kind of place that smells like salt air and fried shrimp, and has been there long enough that the regulars' names are carved into the bar stools by people who have since died. It sits at the end of a two-lane road off Highway 87 that most people only find by accident or by memory. And I had found it by accident 17 years ago when a refinery shut down, rerouted my delivery route along the coast, and I had been going back by memory ever since, not often, maybe 4 or 5 times a year when the drive home from Port Arthur needed to be longer than direct. That Tuesday, it needed to be longer than direct. I had been on the road since 4 in the morning, a chemical plant in Beaumont, a paper mill outside Orange, a detour through Nederland because of a chemical spill on 69 that had the highway patrol turning everyone around 12 miles south of Beaumont. By the time I crossed back into Galveston County at 6:15, my back was a specific kind of tight that comes from 11 hours in a cab. And the idea of driving straight home to the house on Bayou Vista and walking into whatever version of the evening was waiting for me felt like more than I had available. So I turned left instead of right at the 87 junction, drove the 2 miles down to the water, and parked in the gravel lot next to the Anchor and Line with the windows down and the bay smell coming in and the kind of quiet that only exists on Tuesday evenings in places where nobody is trying to impress anyone. My name is Daniel Carver. I am 49 years old. I drive a tanker truck for a petrochemical distributor that services the refinery corridor between Beaumont and Texas City. I have been doing this for 22 years. Same company, different routes, same early mornings and long silences, and the particular relationship with the road that develops when you spend enough hours on it. I own a house in Bayou Vista, a small coastal community on a peninsula between Galveston Bay and the Gulf that I bought with my wife Claire 18 years ago when we were young enough to think that the view would always feel like the most important thing about a house. Claire, I should tell you about Claire. Claire Ashwood Carver, 46 years old, born and raised in Texas City, the daughter of a high school football coach and a woman who taught fourth grade for 31 years. She had been the kind of person who organized things before they needed organizing and who remembered details about people's lives that most people forgot. By the following week, the kind of person who made every room she entered feel slightly more arranged than it had been before she arrived. I had loved that quality from the first evening I met her at a friend's backyard party in Lamarck. The summer after I started driving for the company, she had been 23, sitting at a picnic table explaining to someone the correct way to back a boat trailer down a ramp, and she had been entirely right, and I had sat down beside her and stayed until the party ended. We had been together for 23 years, married for 19. The first 5 years had been the specific kind of hard that is also, in retrospect, exactly right. Two people who both had opinions about how things should be done, learning the difference between the opinions that matter and the ones that can be released. Learning which fights to have and which to let go and which silences to trust. By the time Cole was born, we had arrived at a version of ourselves together that worked in the specific way that a well-tuned engine works. Not beautiful, not dramatic, but reliably functional in a way that you come to depend on without noticing how much you depend on it. She had worked in pharmaceutical sales for 12 years, then shifted 4 years ago to a regional director role with a medical device company that covered the Gulf Coast territory, Houston South, all the way to Corpus Christi. The job required travel Monday night in Corpus, back by Wednesday, Houston Thursday, sometimes overnight, back by Friday if the week cooperated. I had understood the travel from the beginning. I had always understood the travel. We had talked about it when the offer came, a frank conversation at the kitchen table about what it would require and whether we could make it work, and we had decided together that we could. That had been 4 years ago. I did not know at the time of that conversation that the travel would eventually become something other than what we had agreed to. We had a son. His name was Cole, 22 years old, working offshore on a platform crew in the Gulf, 3 weeks on and 1 week off the schedule that offshore workers keep that makes them simultaneously present and absent in a rhythm that becomes its own kind of normal. Cole had his mother's eyes and my stubbornness and the specific quality of a young man who had grown up watching the water and decided he needed to be on it rather than beside it. He had taken 2 semesters of engineering at Texas A&M Galveston before deciding that the classroom version of what he wanted to do was significantly less interesting than the actual version. And had come home one December and told us he was going to try for a crew position. Claire had worried, I had understood, Cole had been right. 23 years together, 19 married, the house paid off 2 years ago, a fact we had celebrated with a bottle of champagne on the back deck that looked out over the bay, the night warm, and the water lit up by a full moon. Claire leaning against me and saying, "We did it, Dan. We actually did it." I had believed completely that we were the kind of couple who did things together and meant it when they said so. I pushed through the door of the Anchor and Line at 6:22. The Tuesday evening crowd was exactly what it always was. 4 men at the bar who were either fishermen or retired refinery workers or both, a couple at a table near the window looking at menus. In the specific stillness of a waterfront bar on a weeknight that has not yet decided what kind of night it is going to be. I ordered a Shiner Bock and settled onto a stool at the far end of the bar, which was my stool, in the specific informal sense that it was always empty when I came in, because nobody else wanted to sit beside the window that looked out onto the parking lot rather than the water. I checked my phone. A message from Cole about a part that had gone out on his platform's secondary pumps. The kind of mechanical problem he described with the focused enthusiasm of someone who is genuinely interested in the problem rather than just reporting it. A message from my dispatcher about tomorrow's first pickup time. Nothing from Claire. I put the phone down and looked at the bay through the side window, which showed me the parking lot and the road and the first strip of water beyond the seawall, and I thought about the specific quality of tiredness that comes not from the body, but from the slow accumulation of small things that you have been managing not to think about. There had been small things. I want to be honest about that because the honest version of the story includes the part where I was not paying close enough attention to what was happening in my own house. The travel had been fine at first, the rhythm of it, the predictability, the way we had arranged our week around her schedule without it feeling like a sacrifice. But somewhere in the second year of the new job, something had shifted in the quality of her presence when she came home. Not dramatically, not in any single moment I could point to. Just a gradual change in the specific way she inhabited the house, as if she were carrying something from her week that she was choosing not to put down when she walked through the door. I had noticed it and had attributed it to the accumulation of a demanding job and had not pushed for the conversation that might have opened the room to something I was not yet ready to enter. I had told myself she is tired, she is under pressure. This is the cost of a career that requires that kind of energy, and things will recalibrate. And they had seemed to recalibrate periodically in the way that things in a long marriage seem to improve and then slowly return to the state they were improving from. I had accepted that rhythm without examining it closely enough. That was my part. I owned it then and I own it now. Then I looked at the parking lot and saw Claire's car. Not similar to Claire's car. Her car, the silver Lexus SUV that the company had leased for her 2 years ago, the one with the crack in the back left taillight housing from the time she had backed into our mailbox in the dark, and the crack had never gotten fixed because neither of us had gotten around to it, parked 3 spots for my truck. In the lot of the Anchor and Line at 6:22 on a Tuesday evening, when she had told me at 6 o'clock in a text I had read at a red light in Nederland that she was still in Houston and the meeting had run late and she'd probably be back tomorrow afternoon. I sat with my beer for a moment, not frozen, thinking. She was in Houston, according to the text. Her car was in Galveston County, according to my eyes. These two facts could not both be true, and in the specific way that certain things become instantly and completely clear when the right piece of information arrives. I understood the larger shape of what I was looking at even before I turned on the bar stool and saw her. She was at a table in the back corner of the room, the corner I hadn't scanned when I came in because it was behind the kitchen partition and required looking around something to see it. I saw her now because the woman who had been sitting beside me on the bar stool had just stood up to go to the restroom, opening the sight line. Claire at the back corner table, her hair down, which she didn't usually wear down on work evenings, a glass of wine in front of her, laughing at something. Her hand on the arm of the man across from her, not the automatic touch of comfortable familiarity, but the deliberate touch of something being demonstrated, something being claimed. The man, 40 or so, dark hair, a button down rolled at the sleeves, the kind of easy posture that comes from being comfortable in a room. I had never seen him before. He was looking at Claire the way you look at something that is still new enough to require your full attention. My keys were in my hand without my remembering reaching for them. I was off the stool. My Shiner Bock was still three-quarters full on the bar. I made it to the door. A hand closed around my wrist. Don't, said a voice I had never heard. Not yet. Sit down first. Part 2, Sonia. She was perhaps 42 with dark red hair, cut short and practical, and the expression of someone who has already been through the thing I was currently in the middle of and has come to specific conclusions about the correct response to it. She had been sitting at the table nearest the door, the two-top I had walked past, coming in without registering anything except that it was occupied. She had a glass of sparkling water in front of her and a canvas tote bag on the chair beside her, and both hands now wrapped around the glass in the way of someone who has been sitting still for a long time, managing a very strong feeling. Sit down. She said again. Not a request, a prescription. I sat down. Your wife, she said. And it was not a question. She had seen my face when I saw Claire, and she had read it correctly in the fraction of a second it took her to stand up and reach me. Yes, I said. The man she's with is my husband, she said. His name is Marcus Webb. He told me he was in Houston for a client meeting. He has told me variations of that for the past 7 months. I looked at her, she looked at me. Outside the window, the bay was doing what the bay does at dusk, going dark and still, and entirely indifferent to what was happening in the building beside it. How long have you known? I asked. I confirmed it 6 weeks ago, she said. I have been building a case for 5. She reached into the canvas tote bag and withdrew a manila folder, set it on the table between us, and pushed it toward me. This is what I have. I want you to see it before you decide what to do next. I opened the folder. The contents were organized with the precision of someone who had done this carefully over a long period. Printed screenshots of text messages between a contact labeled CC Claire Carver, I understood immediately, and the number she had identified as her husband's personal cell. Phone records showing call duration and frequency. Printed from a carrier statement she had clearly obtained through their shared plan, credit card charges at hotels in Houston, Corpus Christi, and once in New Orleans cross-referenced against the dates Claire had given me for work travel. A note from a private investigator, one page professionally formatted, confirming visual contact on 3 occasions. I read for 4 minutes, then I closed the folder. How long? I asked. Not about the documentation, about the thing itself. The earliest message I have is from 8 months ago. She said, there is a reference in one of the earlier ones to something that happened last spring, so possibly longer. She looked at the folder. Your wife wrote to my husband that she had forgotten what it felt like to be someone's priority, that she had spent so long being practical that she had forgotten how to want something. What she looked at me directly. I read that 11 times trying to understand it. I understood it. I did not say so. What do you want to do? I asked. Sonia Webb was quiet for a moment. She had the kind of stillness that comes not from being unfeeling, but from having already felt the worst of it, and arrived at the other side of it where the feelings become information rather than noise. I have already seen an attorney, she said. Twice. The house is in my name. My family owned it before Marcus and I married. And the deed transferred to me at our wedding as part of an estate arrangement. He cannot claim it. She paused. What I need is a complete picture. The documentation I have is strong but not exhaustive. Your perspective, what you know about the timeline from Claire's side, would complete it. For what purpose? For the purpose of walking into a settlement negotiation with everything necessary to ensure that neither of them is in a position to deny, delay, or diminish what they did. She met my eyes. And also because you deserve to not be blindsided any further than you already have been tonight. I looked across the bar at the corner table. Claire was still there, still laughing, her hand still on Marcus Webb's arm. She had been to New Orleans with this man. She had stood on the back deck with me on a full moon night and said, "We did it, Dan," and meant something by it. And she had also been writing messages to this man about being someone's priority. "What's the plan?" I asked. 7 days, she said. "Give me 7 days to add your information to what I have. Give yourself 7 days to see an attorney and make your financial preparations, and then we handle it together. No confrontation tonight in a bar where they can claim you were emotional and reckless. No tipping them off before the paperwork is ready." She looked at me steadily. 7 days is the difference between walking in with a folder and walking in with a case. I picked up my Shiner Bock, which someone had slid down the bar to our table without being asked. The bartender, a man I had seen a dozen times who was pretending very hard to be looking at something else. I drank half of it. 7 days, I said. Sonia Webb nodded once and reached into her tote bag for a notepad. Part 3, the week. I drove home from the Anchor and Line that night on autopilot, which is the only way to drive when the road between you and your destination is physically familiar and emotionally unnavigable. The Bay Road, the lift bridge over the ICW, the left turn onto the peninsula, the house at the end of the second block, the one with the back deck that looked out over the water. Claire's car was not in the driveway, which I had expected. She had texted at 9:30, just got in from Houston, exhausted, probably crashed at a hotel near the medical complex, early meeting in the morning. I read the text in the driveway and responded, "Sounds good, drive safe tomorrow." Then I went inside and sat at the kitchen table for an hour. I want to be honest about that hour because it was not a productive hour. It was not the calm, methodical preparation of a man who had already decided how to handle the situation. It was an hour of sitting in a kitchen that had been ours for 18 years and feeling the specific quality of a thing that has been revealed to be something other than what you believed it to be. Not worse, exactly. Not better, just different. Like a map that has been corrected, the same territory, but the landmarks in the wrong positions. I thought about the New Orleans trip. Claire had told me about it in March, a medical device conference, 3 days. She had come back with a praline tin for the house and a story about a second line parade she had walked into on her way back from dinner. I had eaten the pralines over the course of a week. I had liked the story about the parade. Now I was sitting in the kitchen understanding that the story about the parade had happened with Marcus Webb in it, and the pralines were in the past, and the tin was in the recycling bin, and none of that was recoverable. I am not a man who cries easily. I did not cry that night. What I did was make a list on the back of an envelope, attorneys in Galveston County, financial steps. To take things I needed to document questions I needed to ask Sonia when we spoke again. Making the list was not unemotional, but it was useful, which is what I needed it to be. At midnight, I called Cole. He was on shift, which I had known, but the offshore schedule meant he was awake and accessible. And I had calculated that he was the one person I could call at midnight and tell the truth to without making anything worse. He picked up on the third ring with the background noise of a platform in full operation behind him. "Dad, what's wrong?" "Nothing urgent," I said. "I need to tell you something." I told him the shape of it, the Barsonia, the folder, the plan, not the emotional weight of it, just the facts, the way you tell someone facts when the facts are what they need to know. Cole listened without interrupting, which he had always been good at, a quality he had from Claire that I was choosing in this moment to receive without irony. "How long do you think?" He asked when I finished. 8 months confirmed, maybe longer. Silence on the line. Platform noise. The gulf somewhere below him. "You okay?" "I will be." I said, "I need you to know what's happening. That's all." "Okay." He said, "What do you need from me?" "Nothing right now. Just knowing you know." "I know," he said. "Call me when it's done." We hung up. I ate. I set the phone on the kitchen table and looked at it for a moment. Then I made coffee. Opened my laptop and started the list. Part 4 preparation. Wednesday morning, 6:30, I drove to Beaumont for the first pickup of the day. 11 hours on the road is a specific kind of time. Not empty, not wasted, but different from desk time or conversation time. It is the time in which the mind works at its own pace without interruption, returning to the same points and examining them from different angles until they have been fully understood. By the time I drove back into Galveston County that evening, I had a clear picture of what needed to happen and what it would cost and what the shape of the afterward looked like. Claire called at noon. She was between appointments in Corpus Christi. Her voice had the quality it always had when she was in work mode. Efficient, present the voice of a person performing competence. I told her I was on the road. She told me she would probably be back Thursday afternoon. I said, sounds good. She said, love you. I said, you too. We hung up. I noted the time, 12:14. 7 months of Tuesday and Thursday evenings. The pattern that Sonia had identified and documented, this bar or place off 6th Street in Galveston, sometimes a hotel in Houston, matched the travel schedule I had been accepting as professional necessity for as long as I had stopped counting. I want to be precise about this. I did not feel foolish. I had trusted my wife because she had over 23 years consistently been trustworthy, and trusting someone who has consistently been trustworthy is not foolishness. It is the rational response to the available evidence. The evidence had changed. My response was changing to match it. Thursday morning, I walked into the office of a family attorney named Patricia Hale, who worked out of a building on Broadway in Galveston. I had found her through a recommendation from a man I knew at the refinery, who had been through a divorce 2 years ago and spoke of his attorney the way people speak of surgeons, not warmly, but with the specific respect of someone who knows the outcome could have been significantly worse. Patricia Hale was 58 direct and asked 4 questions before I had finished my opening summary. What was the current state of the household finances? What was in both names and what was in one name? What documentation did I currently have? And what outcome was I seeking? I answered all 4. She took notes without expression. When I finished, she set her pen down and said, the house, being in both names, is the complicating factor. In Texas, property acquired during the marriage is presumed to be community property. The documentation you have and the documentation your contact has accumulated is relevant to the question of fault, which matters in Texas divorces, but does not automatically determine asset division. What does it do? It gives us significant negotiating leverage, she said. Oh. And it means that if we move quickly and correctly, we control the timeline rather than reacting to hers. How quickly? I can have an initial filing ready by end of day Friday, she said, which means papers are served before she knows we're moving. Do it, I said. Patricia Hale wrote something on her notepad. Then she looked up. One more question. Is there any version of this in which you want to preserve the marriage? I thought about the full moon on the back deck, the pralines from New Orleans, 23 years of a specific real life that had been built by 2 people and was now being assessed from the wrong end. No, I said. There isn't. She nodded. I'll have the filing ready Friday. I walked out into the Galveston morning, the particular quality of light that exists on the island in spring salt air and warmth, the kind of morning that the city does without effort and without caring whether anyone appreciates it. And I called Sonia Webb. She answered on the first ring. How did the attorney go? Filing by Friday. I said, good. She said, mine filed Monday. Marcus hasn't been served yet. She's waiting for the right moment. A pause. I found something else.
Tell me.
I went through our credit card statements for the past 14 months. She said, the charges I showed you at the bar were the ones I was certain of. There were others I hadn't been sure how to categorize. I had them audited this week. A brief pause. Marcus has been using our joint card for gifts, jewelry restaurant charges. Once, a booking at a resort in San Antonio that I thought was a client entertainment expense. Total over 14 months, $11,400. I was quiet for a moment. Joint card, joint card. Do you have the statements? Every one of them. Patricia can add them to the documentation package. After I hung up, I drove to a branch of the bank I had used for my personal account for 20 years and opened a new checking account with a cashier's check drawn from my personal savings money I had inherited from my father 3 years ago and kept in a separate account that had never been part of our household finances. I rerouted my direct deposit that afternoon. I set a withdrawal alert on our joint savings account for any transaction over $300. I did not move the joint savings moving. It would signal awareness before the papers were filed. But if Claire attempted to drain it, I would know within minutes. That evening, Claire came home. She came in at 6:45, dropped her bag in the hallway, kissed me on the cheek, and opened the refrigerator to look for something to eat. She was wearing a blue dress I had seen before, and the silver bracelet she usually wore for work, and her hair was done the way she did it when she had been in meetings all day. She looked like Claire. She looked like the woman I had been married to for 19 years. I looked at her from the kitchen doorway and thought about the folder Sonia had given me and about the message she had written to Marcus Webb about forgetting how to want something. How was Corpus? I said. Long, she said. New hospital system, a lot of stakeholders with different ideas. She closed the refrigerator and looked at me. You look tired. Long week, I said. She nodded. Me too. She got a glass of water and went to the couch. We ate dinner, we watched television. She fell asleep with her head on the couch, arm around 9. I moved to the kitchen table, opened my laptop, and went over the financial picture one more time until I was certain I had missed nothing. Friday, Patricia Hale sent me a message at 4:17 in the afternoon filed. Papers will be served Monday morning. I drove to the Anchor and Line that evening, not because I was drawn back to the scene of anything, but because Sonia had suggested we meet to finalize the approach for the following Tuesday, when both sets of papers would have been served, and both of them would know what was coming. She was already there when I arrived, the canvas tote bag on the chair beside her, the sparkling water. The same stillness. How are you holding up? I asked. I'm functional, she said, which was the most honest answer possible. She spread the updated documentation on the table between us. 14 months of joint card charges, the investigator's report, the phone records, her own handwritten chronology with dates and locations. Combined with what Patricia Hale had assembled from the financial records I had provided, it was a complete picture, not a picture with gaps and speculations, but a picture with dates and amounts and documented locations that left no interpretive room. Tuesday. She said they're meeting at the same bar. I've been confirming the pattern for 6 weeks and it has not changed. Same place, same time, 7:30. Do we go together? She thought about it. We arrive separately. You first. You're the one who has a reason to be there. It's your regular bar. I follow 5 minutes later. We sit apart. You wait until she sees you. Then you approach. She looked at me. Not angry. Steady. You have one thing to say and then you leave. What's the one thing? Sonia looked at the table for a moment. Whatever is true, she said. Whatever is the most accurate single sentence. I thought about it. My attorney filed Friday, I said. The house is in both names. We'll let them sort out which part is yours. Sonia almost smiled. That works. Part 5, things that happened during the week. I need to tell you about Wednesday evening because it was the hardest part of the week, harder than the attorney's office or the bank or the evening Claire came home and ate dinner on the couch. Wednesday evening, Cole called me. He was on break, the 2 hour window, mid shift, when the platform crews rotate and the men who are not actively working have time to sleep or eat or call the mainland. He called from a number I recognized as the satellite phone the platform used when the cellular signal was weak, which meant he had used his break time specifically to call me rather than waiting. I've been thinking, he said. About whether you should tell mom what you know before Tuesday. Ugh. I sat down at the kitchen table. Claire was in the shower. Why? Because she's still your wife until she isn't, he said. And because the version of this where you knew for a week and said nothing, I don't know if that's the version of you that you want to be. It was a serious thing for a 22-year-old to say to his father. I sat with it for a moment. I hear you, I said, but if I tell her now, she deletes everything and has a week to prepare a response. I don't have the information to counter. I know that's true, Cole said. I'm not saying the timing is wrong strategically. I'm saying he paused. I'm saying that you have been thinking about strategy all week, and I want to make sure you have also had time to feel what you're feeling. I was quiet for a moment. The shower was still running upstairs. Through the kitchen window, the bay was visible in the last of the evening light, the water going dark the way it goes dark on clear nights. I felt it, I said. Okay, Cole said. Then you're doing the right thing. You're going to be handling this from a platform for another 12 days, I said. There's nothing you can do right now. I know, he said, but I wanted you to know I'm thinking about it. A pause. Tell me something else. Tell me what you're going to do after. After Tuesday, after the papers, after the house gets figured out, what are you going to do? I had not thought about this in specific terms. I had been thinking in the language of procedures and documentation and the immediate next steps. Cole was asking about the longer question, the one that came after all the procedures were complete. I don't know yet, I said honestly. Drive trucks, probably. Look at the water. Figure out what the next thing is. That's enough, Cole said. That's a plan. We talked for another 20 minutes about the pump part, which had been fixed, and about a pod of dolphins that had come alongside the platform 2 days ago and stayed for 40 minutes, which Cole described in the specific, detailed way of someone who has decided that the natural world is worth paying close attention to. When we hung up, I felt for the first time in the week something that was adjacent to all right, not resolved, not healed, not finished. Adjacent to all right, which was sufficient. Thursday night, Sonia texted me from the number she had set up specifically for this communication, a prepaid phone purchased in cash, the number shared only between the two of us. She had confirmed through a source I did not ask about that Marcus and Claire had their usual reservation at the Anchor and Line for Tuesday at 7:30. She had also confirmed. Through Patricia's contact at the courthouse that her own filing was proceeding without complication and Marcus had not yet been served. One more text at the end. Did you eat today? I had in fact forgotten to eat lunch. I made a sandwich and ate it standing at the kitchen counter. Then I texted back, yes, you. Her reply, coffee mostly. Getting better at it. There was something in that exchange that I have thought about since the specific quality of communication between two people who are going through the same thing in parallel and have no pretense between them because pretense requires energy that neither of them has available. Sonia Webb and I were not friends. We were not allies in any romantic or dramatic sense. We were two people who had been handed the same problem by the same two people and had decided that the most efficient response was a shared one. That efficiency had its own kind of honesty. Friday, Claire came home early. She had canceled her afternoon appointments, she said, because she was tired and she wanted a day at home. She made pasta for dinner. She asked about my week. I told her about the road, the detours, the Netherlands spill. She told me about the new hospital system in Corpus, the stakeholders, the politics of institutional sales. We talked like two people who have been talking to each other for 23 years and have learned which conversations sustain themselves and which require more than either person has. After dinner, she sat on the back deck with a glass of wine. I came out and sat beside her. The bay was doing its evening thing, the lights from the refineries across the water, the occasional boat, the specific quiet of an industrial coastline, going through its nighttime operations. We had sat on this deck 1,000 times. The view was identical to every other time we had sat there. I've been thinking, Claire said, about what about us. She turned her wine glass in her hands. About how long it's been since we actually talked. Not about schedules or coal or the house, just talked. I looked at the water. I said nothing. I feel like we've been operating in parallel for a long time, she said. Like roommates who like each other but I don't know, don't reach for each other anymore. I thought about Marcus Webb rolling a wine glass between his fingers at a corner table, about Sonia's folder, about the New Orleans pralines, and what they had actually been about. Yeah, I said. I know what you mean. Maybe we should do something about it, she said. A trip somewhere. Just us. I looked at the water for a long time. The lights on the refineries across the bay stayed on all night, every night, constant and indifferent. Maybe, I said. She went to bed at 10. I sat on the deck until midnight. Then I went inside, checked the alert on the joint account, nothing, and went to sleep. Part 6 Tuesday. I got to the Anchor in line at 7:10. The Tuesday crowd was thin the way it always was. A few regulars at the bar, two tables occupied by people who looked like they had been there since 5, and were not planning on leaving the television above the bar showing a baseball game with the sound off. I ordered a Shiner Bock from the bartender who had slid my drink down to Sonia's table 8 days ago without being asked. He did not acknowledge that anything had happened the last time I was here, which I appreciated. I chose the same stool, the same view of the parking lot. At 7:22, Marcus Webb's car came into the lot, a dark blue F-150, newer than mine, cleaner than anything that spends time on the road should be. He came in alone, went to the back corner without looking around, ordered something from the server. 7:31, Claire's Lexus turned into the lot. She came through the door and went directly to the back corner without scanning the room. The way someone goes directly to a place they have been many times. She did not see me. I watched her greet Marcus Webb, the specific warmth of the greeting, the way they settled into the booth like people who are comfortable in a booth together. At 7:35, Sonia Webb came through the door. She looked exactly as she had looked 8 days ago, practical, still the canvas tote bag, the expression of someone who has already processed the worst of it and is now operating from the other side. She found a table near the window and ordered sparkling water without looking at me. I gave it 5 minutes. 5 minutes of sitting on my stool, drinking my Shiner Bock, watching the parking lot through the window, while behind me, my wife sat in a corner booth with another woman's husband, and both of them believed for 5 more minutes that this was a Tuesday like the previous Tuesdays. Then I picked up my phone and walked across the room. I had loaded the screenshot Sonia had given me into a clean folder on my phone, not a gallery, a folder, organized by date, easy to navigate. I had tested it twice on Sunday to make sure the images were sharp and the dates were clearly visible. I had also loaded 3 photographs, one from the private investigator's report, showing Claire and Marcus Webb entering the hotel on the New Orleans date. One from the credit card audit, the printout of the $11,000 figure with the line items highlighted. One screenshot of a message Claire had written. I forgot what it felt like to have someone who made me feel like the only thing in the room. I set the phone on the table, face up, screenshot, visible. Claire looked at the screen, then she looked at me. Patricia Hale filed Friday. I said, House is in both names. You'll hear from your attorney this week. I looked at Marcus Webb once. He was looking at the phone. Her attorney filed Monday. I said, You might have already heard. Then I turned and walked back toward the door. Behind me, I heard Claire say my name. I did not stop. I heard Marcus Webb say something that was not a full sentence. I did not slow down. Sonia was at her table near the window, and as I passed her, she stood, picked up the white envelope from the top of her tote bag, and walked toward the back corner. I pushed through the front door and stopped in the parking lot in the salt air. With the bay visible over the top of the seawall. 45 seconds later, Sonia came through the door. Done, I asked. Done, she said. She had served Marcus Webb the divorce papers personally, which in Texas requires only that the person receiving them be an adult resident of the state, and Sonia had made the determination weeks ago that personal service was the appropriate method. He had been holding the envelope when she left the table. Whatever expression was on his face, she had looked at it for approximately 4 seconds and then turned and walked out. We stood in the parking lot for a moment. The bay was doing what the bay does in the evening, going dark at the edges, the refinery lights coming on across the water. You all right? I asked. I will be, she said, the same answer she had given me when I asked how she was holding up. The honest answer. Thank you for grabbing my arm, I said. She looked at me for a moment. Thank you for sitting down. Part 7, what followed? Claire called 11 times that night. I let them all go to voicemail. I drove home along the Bay Road over the lift bridge down the peninsula to the house at the end of the second block. I made a sandwich. I sat on the back deck with the lights off looking at the water, and I let the 11 calls be what they were without trying to manage them. The first 3 voicemails were angry. She used the word humiliated. She used the word evidence. She said I had ambushed her and made her a spectacle in a room full of people. The 4th voicemail was quieter. She said she needed to explain. The 7th voicemail was very quiet, just her breathing for a moment, and then Daniel, please. The 11th was 3 words, call me back. Me. I did not call back. The next morning at 7:45, she pulled into the driveway. I watched from the upstairs window as she tried the front door. It did not open. I had called a locksmith Thursday morning, not the morning after the bar, but the morning of the bar before I left for Beaumont, before I drove to Galveston. Before 7:31 when she came through the door of the Anchor and Line and walked directly to the back corner. I had called the locksmith the way I had made the list on the back of the envelope the first night because the preparation was part of the decision and the decision had been made. She knocked for 8 minutes. I watched her from the window. She was wearing the clothes she had worn the night before, which meant she had not gone home after the bar. I did not speculate about where she had been. It was no longer my problem to speculate about. Eventually, she sat down on the front step and called me. This time I answered. The locks are changed, I said. Daniel, your clothes are in 2 duffel bags in the garage. The code is Cole's birthday. You can't. Patricia Hale is my attorney. Her number is on top of the duffel bags. You'll want to return the call she made to your phone this morning. A silence. I need to explain. Explain to Patricia, I said. I'm done with my part of this conversation. And I hung up. 12 minutes later, I heard the garage door open and close. When I looked out the window, the Lexus was gone and the garage was empty except for the oil stain from my truck and the 2 duffel bags that were no longer there. Cole called that afternoon. He was between shifts, the 40-minute break that came before the rotation, and his voice had the quality of someone who has been thinking about something for a long time and has decided how to say it. She texted me, he said. I know. She said you locked her out without warning and that you wouldn't talk to her. A pause. She said it was a rough patch and she made mistakes. That's one version, I said. I know it's one version, Cole said. She's my mother. I'm going to talk to her eventually, but not yet. Pause. I wanted you to know I'm not in the middle of this. You're not, I said. You never were. She's going to try to put me there. I know. You know how to handle that. He was quiet for a moment. The pump is back online, he said. 3rd week is going well. Good. Well, I said, come home for your week off. We'll eat something. Yeah, he said. I will. Part 8, the settlement. Patricia Hale called me on a Friday afternoon, 3 weeks after the filing, with the specific tone that attorneys use when they have information to convey that is neither catastrophic nor simple. Claire's attorney has reviewed the documentation, she said. The screenshots, the credit card audit, the investigator's report, they are recommending a settlement offer. What are the terms? She keeps the Lexus in her personal accounts. She gets half of the joint retirement savings, which is the Texas default. She relinquishes her claim to the house in exchange for you absorbing the remaining balance on the equity line, which is approximately $14,000. A pause. Given the documentation, her attorney has advised her that a contested proceeding is unlikely to produce a better outcome. I concur with that assessment. How long to finalize? If she signs by end of next week, we close the settlement in 30 days. Take it. I said. Patricia Hale made a sound that was not quite a sigh, but was in that neighborhood. Daniel, I want you to know that this is a good outcome. The house was the variable. You keep it. I know, I said. I know it's good. What I did not say to Patricia Hale, because it was not her business and would not have been useful information anyway, was that the house being a good outcome was not the same as the house being uncomplicated. 19 years of a life had happened in that house. Cole had grown up in it. Claire had painted the kitchen twice, once in a color she hated and once in the color it was currently. The back deck existed because we had added it together a weekend project in the 3rd year that had taken 3 weekends and one significant argument about the placement of the support posts. The view from the back deck was still the view from the back deck, regardless of what the settlement papers said. But the house was mine. The equity line was manageable. The retirement savings were split down the middle, which was fair. Cole was not in the middle of it. I signed the settlement documents on a Thursday morning. The title company on Seawall Boulevard, a woman behind a notary stamp, 2 copies of everything. When it was done, I drove to the Anchor in Line because it was on the way, and because it seemed like the appropriate place to go when the formal portion of something ends. I ordered a Shiner Bock and sat at my stool, the one at the end of the bar beside the window that looked out onto the parking lot rather than the water. The Tuesday crowd was quiet. The television was showing baseball sound off. Sonia Webb was not there. She had texted me the previous week that her settlement had closed. Marcus Webb had signed without a fight. The house was legally hers. His access to the joint accounts had been severed. She had written, "Thank you for the 7 days." I had written, "Thank you for the folder." She had written back 3 days later, "I'm going to be all right." I had written, "Me too." I did not know if we would see each other again. We had exchanged maybe 40 text messages over 5 weeks and had been in the same room together 4 times, including the parking lot outside the bar. She had given me the folder and the plan and the specific instruction to sit down instead of walk out. And I had given her a complete picture of Claire's side of the timeline and the satisfaction of having served the papers in person rather than through a process server. It was not friendship exactly. It was something that did not have a common name because it does not commonly happen. The specific solidarity of two strangers who were handed the same problem by the same two people and faced it together. I thought about that as I drank my Shiner Bock and watched the parking lot. Then I thought about something else. I thought about the Tuesday, 3 weeks before this Tuesday, when I had come in from a day on the road and sat at this same stool and looked through the side window at Claire's car in the parking lot and felt the specific, immediate recognition of something irreversible. I had known in that moment, not deduced, not concluded, but known. With the animal certainty that the body carries before the mind catches up that the life I had been living was a different life from the life I had believed I was living. That knowledge had cost something. It still costs something. It would probably cost something for a long time, but knowing the true shape of the thing was better than not knowing. The false version had been comfortable and warm and had felt like enough until it didn't, and the real version was neither comfortable nor warm, but was at least accurate. And I had always found accuracy more useful than comfort in the long run. Part 9 after. Cole came home on his week off in April. He drove down from Houston in his truck with a duffel bag and the specific loose energy of a young man who has been at sea for 3 weeks and is happy to be on solid ground. He dropped his bag in his old room and came downstairs, and we stood in the kitchen looking at each other for a moment. "You look okay," he said. "I am okay," I said. He opened the refrigerator, assessed the contents with the critical eye of someone who has been eating platform food for 3 weeks, and announced that we needed to go to the grocery store. We drove to the HEB on 61st and filled a cart with things neither of us would have bought with Claire's specialty sausage, a specific kind of hot sauce he had been thinking about for 2 weeks. Ingredients for the pasta I had started making in January, and that had turned out to be unexpectedly good. We cooked together in the kitchen that evening. Cole at the stove, me at the counter, the back door open to let in the bay air. He told me about the platform, the work, the crew, a particular engineer he respected, the Dolphins that had come alongside again. A different pod this time, or possibly the same one, going in a different direction. Mom texted me last week. He said, "What did she say?" She's staying with a friend in Houston. She got a transfer to the company's Texas territory. He was quiet for a moment, stirring the sauce. She asked if I was angry at her. "What did you tell her?" "I told her I was working on it." He looked at me. "I'm not going to stop talking to her. She's still my mother." "I know," I said. "I don't need you to." She said Marcus. Cole paused. She said Marcus ended it when everything came out, that he told her it was too complicated and walked away. I said nothing. She seemed surprised, Cole said. "She shouldn't have been," I said. He nodded, went back to the sauce. "She told me she thought she was in love with him," he said. "She said she knew it was wrong, but she thought it was real." He stirred for a moment. "I told her that real and right aren't the same thing, and that I was glad she had time to figure out the difference. 22 years old, on an offshore platform in the Gulf. And better at this than most people twice his age. I had done something right, even if I had also done things wrong. We ate on the back deck. The bay was doing what the bay does in April, warming up the pelicans back after the winter, the water a different color than it had been in January. We talked about his next rotation, about a potential advancement on the platform he was being considered for, about nothing important, and a few things that were. You going to keep the house? He asked. Yes, I said. Good, he said. I like having somewhere to come home to. Part 10, Sonia again. She called me on a Saturday morning in May. I was on the back deck with coffee, which had become my Saturday morning habit since January. The specific ritual of early morning in the bay and the first hour before the day required anything. I had not heard from Sonia Webb since the text she had sent the previous month, saying she was going to be all right. I hope this isn't a strange call. She said, "It isn't," I said. She had been thinking. She told me about the evening at the Anchor in Line, not the second Tuesday of the confrontation, but the first one. The evening she had grabbed my arm. She had been thinking about what had made her do it. She had been sitting at that table for 2 hours, waiting to confront Marcus alone, and when I walked through the door and she read what was on my face, something had changed in her calculation. "I think I was waiting for someone who already knew," she said. "Someone who didn't need it explained. Someone who was already inside the thing." "I was very much inside the thing," I said. "I could see that," she said. "And then I wanted you to know that the way you handled the week mattered to me. You didn't do anything reckless. You didn't make it harder than it needed to be. You were just steady, and I needed someone steady." I thought about the hour at the kitchen table the first night, the list on the back of the envelope, the phone call to Cole at midnight, the drive to Beaumont the next morning with 11 hours to think. Steady was not how it had felt from the inside, but from the outside it had apparently looked like enough. "You were steady too," I said. "I had a head start," she said. "I'd had 6 weeks. We talked for 40 minutes. She had reopened the architecture practice she had scaled back during the marriage. Marcus had discouraged the expansion, she told me, in the specific, subtle way that certain people discourage the things in their partners that make their partners less manageable. She had 3 new clients. She was planning to travel somewhere she had never been. She wasn't sure where yet, but somewhere the air smelled like something other than Houston. "You still going to Riverbend?" she asked. "Anchor in Line," I corrected. "Sorry, Anchor in Line." Probably," I said. "It's a good bar." She laughed an actual laugh, not the controlled near laugh of our parking lot conversation, but a real one, the sound of someone who has moved far enough through something to find it occasionally unexpectedly funny. "I might come by sometime," she said. "If that's not strange, it's not strange," I said. "Okay," she said. "Good." We hung up. I finished my coffee on the back deck, watching the bay do its morning thing. The pelicans were working the shallows along the seawall. A shrimp boat was moving south toward the pass. The refineries across the water were processing things they had been processing since before I was born and would continue processing after I was gone. Indifferent and necessary and entirely without opinion about anything that happened on this side of the water. I thought about a lot of things, about the 23 years, about the Tuesdays, about the folder, about Cole describing the dolphins going alongside the platform and staying for 40 minutes as if they had somewhere to be but were choosing for this particular stretch of water to be here. The world had reorganized itself around a different set of facts than the ones I had been working with, and the reorganization had cost something real, and the new arrangement was not the one I had planned, and it was, as best I could tell, sitting on a back deck in the May morning with the pelicans and the shrimp boat and the refinery lights going about their business going to be sufficient. Not triumphant, not the clean ending of a story that resolved into something uncomplicated, just sufficient, which is the word for a life that is honest about what it has and is working with what it has towards something that might eventually be called good. I went inside, I made another cup of coffee. I called Cole, who answered from the platform with the pump noise in the background, and we talked for 20 minutes about nothing urgent, which was exactly the right amount. Then I checked the weather for the week, mapped out Tuesday's route, and started getting ready for Monday. Epilogue. Cole made senior crew on the platform in June. He called me from the platform satellite phone, his voice carrying the specific quality of a young man who has earned something he worked for. We talked for 30 minutes. He came home the following week and we celebrated with the specialty sausage and the hot sauce and an Astros game on the back deck. And when he left Sunday morning, he held on a beat longer at the door the way he had started doing. Sonia came to the anchor in line the second Saturday in July. She found me at my stool at the end of the bar. She sat down beside me. We had 2 beers and talked for 2 hours about the architecture practice, about the trip she had finally booked to Portugal, about the specific texture of a life being rebuilt after a significant reorganization. She asked about Cole. I asked about the clients. We did not talk about Marcus Webb or Claire Carver at all, which felt correct. The way not talking about something can feel correct when the thing has been fully addressed and has nothing left to offer the conversation. When she left, she said, same time next month. Same time next month. I said, she drove out of the parking lot. The bay was lit up in the way it gets on summer evenings, warm and golden, the refinery lights coming on across the water, the first stars appearing in the east. I stayed at the bar another 30 minutes looking at the parking lot through the window, thinking about nothing in particular. The bartender refilled my Shiner Bock without being asked. You seem better than the last few times. He said, I am better. I said, he nodded, moved down the bar to check on the other regulars. The Tuesday crowd came and went. The baseball game played without sound. The bay went about its evening outside. I thought about Sonia grabbing my arm at the door and saying, don't leave yet. I thought about sitting down at her table and opening a folder I had not known existed. I thought about 7 days of preparation and the specific satisfaction of walking across a bar room with everything necessary in hand. I thought about Cole's voice at midnight from the platform. Steady and practical and more wise than his years warranted, I thought about Patricia Hale saying, well, what do you have? I had had quite a lot, as it turned out. More than I had thought when I was standing at the door with my keys in my hand looking at the exit. The woman who had grabbed my arm had known that before I did. Exactly enough. The end.